There are a lot of very, very small signals that tell people that they don't fit in here. We realize we need to become more diverse. We want to attract these people to our company. We're not going to do that by putting them in front of an interview panel of 4 middle-aged white men. Every day, a woman goes to the job site and wears a men's extra large because that's the only thing they bought. And every day, this little voice in her head is telling her, you don't fit in, because she literally doesn't fit in.
These are the true stories
of the shared pains
facing designers,
builders, inspectors,
and operators
on our quest to
streamline collaboration
in the digital age.
Find out what happens
when industry and technology
stop playing nice
and start getting real.
We are the Construction Progress
Coalition.
And this is the Shared Pains Podcast.
Welcome back to the Shared Pains Podcast. My name is Sasha Reed, and as your host, my role is to help all of us gain a new perspective on the systemic changes needed for design and construction to thrive in the digital age. Today, we're going to focus on the cultural transformation taking place in front of us, whether it's gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic, or generational. Diversity is so much more than surface labels. Diversity is about a new type of mindfulness that's required to cultivate these cultural transformations. We're missing our voice of reason, Dan Smilillo, today, and in his place for this episode is CPC's Executive Vice President, Walker Lockard. Before Nathan introduces our guest perspectives, Walker, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Sasha. My day job is the Applied Technology Specialist at Polk Mechanical Company in the DFW area of Texas. So I started in the industry in 2015 as an assistant project manager. I've always loved technology. I started getting more interested into research and development and tinkering and training and working with field guys to help them better implement technology in their workflow. As far as the CPC goes, I feel like I've joined the Justice League. So,
all right, Nathan, who are our guest perspectives today?
Sasha, this topic of diversity extends from a conversation that I had during the Mechanical Contractors MCAA Technology Conference in Florida, where I sat down with
Tauhira Hoossainy. I manage the construction strategy around technology for Milwaukee Tool. I'm focused on not just products, but also services and solutions, and how do we support holistically what's going on in the industry, understanding the big picture trends and how they're affecting those contractors that are essentially the core of our business.
In my interactions with Tauhira, I've learned that she has a knack for asking very poignant questions to a room full of strangers, which is why I knew she'd get along great with our next guest. Please welcome
Danielle Buncio. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called VIATechnik, headquartered in Chicago. VIATechnik is a construction technology consulting and implementation firm. We work with the real estate and construction industry to help sort of bring their technology implementation to the next level, making sure that they're really getting value from it. So we have 6 offices in the U.S. We have a support office in the Philippines that enables an almost 24-hour work cycle.
Part of what Danielle and her husband are doing is, in my opinion, fundamentally transforming how owners and contractors leverage BIM through cloud collaboration and a global supply chain efficiency. And fun fact, our next guest was actually classmates with Danielle at Stanford. Meet
Uchenna, Okoye. All 14 years of my professional career have been spent primarily on IPD or lean projects. I worked for structural engineering firms in San Francisco and in Boston. Most recently, I work with Skanska, a general contractor.
Uchenna and I share many of the same career experiences, having benefited from team diversity through shared risk and reward contracts known as Integrated Project Delivery or IPD. Our life experiences, on the other hand, could not be further apart.
I grew up in couple of the rougher spots in Los Angeles, actually very near to where the LA riots started in '93. Like, that's really important in bringing a diverse perspective. And that's the thing that drives, I think, good projects.
Rounding out our perspectives on diversity, we need to hear from a more seasoned perspective. Right, Frank? Frank
Moore, and I'm actually delighted to just hit the 30-year anniversary of me originally starting at Autodesk. I got an offer to relocate out to Sausalito to join this startup called Autodesk. And I now co-manage a team of over 16 people worldwide, with a large majority of our time is dedicated to good design and construction standards communities across the world, trying to make sure that our customers aren't given any undue pain and suffering due to some of these standards.
All kidding aside, CPC would not be where it is today without Frank's belief in our vision to shape the future of construction data standards. 30 years have brought a lot of design data standards to this industry, some more useful than others. We're counting on Frank to ensure our CDX initiatives aren't recreating the wheel, but building on top of it. Back to you, Sasha.
The process is fairly simple. Digest, debate, decide, and deliver. First, we'll digest why diversity is more important than ever before debating our different understandings of what diversity is all about. We'll try our best to tackle these tough questions so that you can decide where to be more mindful in navigating the cultural transformation process. All right, so let's dive into this then. So for digest, what are the different categories of diversity?
Yeah, it was actually through that conversation with Tauhira and Danielle that I realized how broad the topic of diversity really is.
Right? There's the diversity of gender, but there's also the diversity of experience, the diversity of geography, the diversity of age. And so many different pieces of this come into play. And by enriching these different perspectives, that's how you're actually able to create even more of a sustainable viewpoint.
Uchenna gave us a little bit more background on his life experiences that certainly go more than skin deep.
I got this from my mom. Her big piece was always diversity. Like if a school was really diverse, that's what she was trying to get us. If a neighborhood was really diverse, she would do whatever she could to get us in that neighborhood, even though that was really, really, really difficult. That was what she was leaning towards. It has a lot to do with, like, her dad was half white, half black. Her mom was half Blackfoot Indian, half black. That's a classic Southern American black kind of mixture. And then my dad is from Nigeria. He's like African. Then I married an Indian woman and have children. And then my brother married a Japanese woman. And so these cousins more or less think anybody could be related to them.
Sasha, I meant to ask this to Uchenna. How do you define the difference between race and ethnicity?
From my perspective, the way that I kind of look at this is your race determines what your skin color, hair color, all of those, your surface looks like, but your ethnicity is more related to the culture, that which you find as your place of upbringing. So you could be of one race, but you could identify with a different ethnicity based on how you're raised. So the roots you put down are really taking from cues from all of those in the community around you, not just your biological family.
Yeah, there's definitely a clear separation here when it comes to diversity of the kind of how are you perceived outward facing, that snap judgment versus, how you see the world based on your life experiences.
One of the prominent voices on diversity is Rockson. He talks about having lived in 20 countries before the age of 21 as a use your difference management company, essentially helping people to celebrate their differences and how businesses should be incorporating that.
Well, and that brings up another subsurface category of diversity besides life experience, which is personality type. Uchenna and I went way down the rabbit hole about
diversity in thought. I mean, if you look at, like we had talked about before, the DISC survey, DISC, if you look at the construction side and the ownership side, it's all Ds, not all Ds, but it's a very high percentage D, which is active task-oriented people. The design side tends to be a pretty active, a pretty high I, which is the inducement guys, the active plus people, the active-oriented and people-oriented. And then engineering tends to be a lot of the Cs. All the compliance folks, all of the don't talk to me, but give me a 38,000 task list, I'll get it done. Don't worry about it, right?
So if you haven't heard of Myers-Briggs or DISC or StrengthsFinder or the other personality and team dynamic assessments, we put some reference links in the show notes. But back to Uchenna's point.
Because they're all like that, what IPD does, what IPD was able to do in some of these collaborative environments and big rooms is put D, I, S, and Cs all together. Because you can't get it if you just go to a construction firm, in theory, because it'll be mostly Ds.
Do we truly understand the risk of not accepting diverse opinions or ideas?
As an AEC industry, I'd say no.
I've grown up in it, and I've seen from a very, very young age the lack of diversity in construction. It's obviously the right thing to do, right? But beyond that, there's definitely a value proposition. AGC and Autodesk every year get together, put out a report about our skilled labor shortage. And so the most recent one I saw was that 80% of contractors are having a tough time finding skilled labor. The same time, the highest number I've ever seen of women in construction is 9%, right? We've totally ignored potentially 50% of our workforce. We realize we need to become more diverse. We want to attract these people to our company. We're not going to do that by putting them in front of an interview panel of four, middle-aged white men. And we're not going to do that if we don't give them the opportunity to thrive and to learn and to make that impact in our company.
Those same leaders are also neglecting the needs of another group that now makes up almost 50% of the workforce.
People think that the needs that millennials have are petty, right? But there's nothing petty about the need to make an impact, right? To want to see that when you entered this company, you made it a better place. You made the industry a better place. That's awesome, right? And there's nothing petty about that. And that is actually something very powerful that if we foster it correctly and the millennials in our workplace can be huge, right?
You know what I just realized, Walker? You might be a Generation Z.
No, shut your
No?
mouth. No, Gen Z is they just got into college.
Oh, born after 95.
Wow. I thought millennials were born later than that. I thought it was right before 2000.
Millennials can begin between anywhere in 80 to 84. Because I'm solidly in the elder millennial category. And Sasha, as a Gen X, you still remember days where you couldn't rely on cell phones to get a hold of people, and you actually called on a landline and actually had to show up on time, right?
Yeah, that was a thing. From a Gen Xer's perspective, you have one foot in the digital world and one foot in the analog world. You understand how to navigate the two, hopefully halfway decent to be of use and value. But it really is understanding how to translate that worldview and those ideas and those suggestions from those who are of that Gen X or Gen Z, and be able to align it to what the business value is.
So how I see it is there's certain personality traits and experiences that make a good translator, regardless of age, race, geography, and social status. As an experienced translator between industry tech and human needs, Tauhira explains how, ironically, it was humility that led to her expertise.
One of my first jobs as a teenager, I was a night shift supervisor at a automotive assembly plant. And one of the things that I learned very quick, kind of going to that generational gap, is that I didn't know everything or almost anything, especially as it came to, automotive manufacturing. And so what's interesting is, I was put in a position that was a risk, and I was able to learn, and folks believed in me, but I was also able to see and learn and immediately build that humility. And I think that's something that when we talk about diversity and we talk about bringing in different values, we talk so much about how do we grab the millennials and how do we bring them in and make them feel important and special. But I think there is also a big part that has to do with how do we make sure that the workforce that already exists feels their equity and knows what a legacy that they are creating.
Or you're told to expect failure when interacting with your field guys and trying to roll out technology. But really what I found is that it's the approach that, how do you approach somebody about innovation that really truly matters? And are you trying to solve the problems that they already have? Are you inventing problems? Are you asking them to perform mental exercises? It's I want their insight. I want to hear those questions that they're going to ask so that I can research, because I really want to find out what their pains and what their concerns are.
If you're in a monoculture, a mono religion, a place where there's only one pervasive ideal, and understanding of the world that is shared, there's nothing pushing you out of that forward trajectory. It's only when you travel outside that lane, outside those bounds, that you're then confronted with something that challenges or is so different from your worldview that you have to take pause and think about it.
Whoa, Sasha, that sounds pretty scary. I think I'm going to just keep doing things the way I've always done it. Right, Frank?
Remember Autodesk, that PC CAD company who failed to adopt a cloud and mobile, right? We want to stick around. We want to defend our right to exist as a thriving software company. So we have to be relevant, and part of that is bringing in the right talent that can help us transform to a more nimble cloud and mobile company. And with that, you need the diversity of people that can help you attack these problems.
When it comes to cultural transformation like diversity, there's a tipping point when leadership stops asking, what's the ROI if we do this? And instead can ask themselves the tougher questions like, what's the risk if we do nothing? It's that sense of urgency that leads to
more than 70% of the people brought into Autodesk over the last year and a half are aged 39 or younger.
Wow.
And at the same time, the diversity of the types of people bringing in from all different ethnic backgrounds and parts of the world is at an all-time high.
Let's move into decide. How do we move beyond surface level equality and focus on the value of interpersonal diversity?
Well, I think that's the challenge with this new mindset, right? Is it's more than just accepting that people are different. It's about embracing the value in those differences.
The more you lean towards understanding that brilliance can come from anywhere, the better off you are. Because you can go to state school and be able to find the right person, not just a person or a smart person, but the right person for what you're looking for.
Tauhira reminds us that these challenges are not exclusive to construction.
There's challenges in diversity in engineering. There's challenges in diversity in manufacturing. Diversity is similar to technology in that you never really want to just say, I want tech for the sake of tech. I'm just going to pour BIM or VR or robotics on something. But it's really, what are you solving and what's that core problem that you're stepping back towards? And that's where you see the value in diversity.
Yeah, so at VIATechnik, we always talk about people, process, and technology, right? So we're a technology firm, but we understand that the only way we're going to impact the industry is the people on the process side. And so we take that to heart as well, right? That's an approach that we use when we implement technology with our clients, is helping understand the people, the skill sets, who are the change champions, who are maybe less interested in adopting this technology. What are their processes that need to change? Which ones are actually really awesome and make up their competitive advantage, and they should stick with that?
There is surface level differences, and then there is that kind of subtopical difference that really causes us to react, view the world in different ways, see the world in certain ways. And that's really kind of what we must be mindful of, that there are those two differences.
Yeah, it feels like the answer to our shared pains with diversity starts with a new cultural mindset that we don't know what we don't know.
How do we start recognizing that common ground, then identifying, well, where are we different, and then leveraging those differences to invite them to speak up?
You know, we can sit in the room, and we have many brilliant minds who could sit in the room and create the best tool for us. But even just the three of us here, what might be the best tool for us isn't necessarily going to be the best tool for the contractor. So it goes back to not just thinking about what they would want, but that ethnographic research, the user experience, really going from a behavioral-based approach to understanding holistically what they're looking for and really starting to kind of empathize and build on their pain points.
Well, and also recognizing that because each of us as humans are not the same, that a one-size-fits-all standard will never work. It has to be flexible and dynamic.
So we don't have everybody has to be the US way or everybody has to be the Philippines way. Our clients are global too, right? So we'll have a client in Japan, we'll have one in China, someone in India. So it's not about just adopting to those specific cultures, but we have a VIATechnik culture. So we've defined our own culture, and it's sort of the VIATechnik way, not that we're forcing you to a US way or to a Philippines way. But we can only do that if we're using really strong like technology collaboration tools. So we basically built an internal Slack channel where there's constant communication, constant knowledge sharing. We have a really robust knowledge sharing platform where people are kind of like an internal wiki, right? People are constantly posting what they're learning, what they're seeing on their project sites, so that like collective insights from the 1,500 plus jobs we've worked on are getting out from one person's mind into everyone's mind. We use a platform called Asana, which is a team collaboration tool used by like the Facebooks and Ubers. And actually it's something that we're getting a lot of our construction clients to start using as well. It's actually very easy to be writing messages back and forth on Asana. Here's the instructions. Please help do this. Here's my question back. And sort of view that person as a name on a website, right? And so we definitely are very mindful about building that connection. And a lot of times that's done through like physical location, right? So 4 times a year, we send somebody from our US offices over to our Philippines office. Twice a year, we send someone from the Philippines office over here. And it's just to totally immerse each other in that culture.
All right, finally, let's dive into the deliver. What is the role of leadership, both top down and bottom up, to drive this cultural transformation?
It starts with a recognition that these inherent biases do exist and then looking for creative ways to combat them.
There are a lot of very, very small signals that tell people that they don't fit in here. I love what Procore is doing. I went to a Procore Women in Construction conference in New York, and they passed out women-sized construction vests, right? Every day, a woman goes to the job site and wears a men's extra large because that's the only thing they bought. And every day, this little voice in her head is telling her, you don't fit in, because she literally doesn't fit in. And so we need to be careful about those small signals, right? The golf trips that the millennials just don't golf anymore, right? The hunting trips that women don't go on. So some of those smaller signals actually have really big ripple effects.
Incorporating these personality tests into your hiring, even though some people might not be happy with that, I still think that helps quite a bit.
In talking with Frank, it sounds like Autodesk is already doing something just like that.
A lot of people are doing the Berkman, where they try to analyze, it's a lengthy questionnaire and they give you a report. You figure out, okay, there's these traits. And how do I behave when I'm bringing my best self to work? Like, what's my normal? Like, how does Frank Moore look like in the workplace when it's a normal day and there's not a million fires to put out? How do I morph into something less than that when I'm under some stress?
Something that the tech industry is doing now that I really appreciate is nameless resumes, right? Mm-hmm. And blind interviews sort of things.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, huge. I've never seen anything like that. And that for me is one of the biggest things that the tech industry, outside of, there's a whole lot of things you can thank for them, good and bad. But the biggest thing is that a lot of these companies now, because of their own diversity issues, have come up with nameless resumes. So you don't look at a name. You look at my name, you look at your name, right? Uchenna Okoye, Nathan Woods, AEC industry. Wow, okay, well, yeah, okay. There's a lot of, induced bias, a lot of that kind of stuff that is there.
Now, I'm all for the use of technology to remove negative aspects of how our brains function, but at some point we will actually have to deal with the cultural issues.
It's so easy, no matter where you are or what industry that you're in, it's so easy to think about things from the standpoint of, this is what got me here, or this is what's gotten us to this point, so this is what I need to keep doing. And especially in those times of stress, or those times like we're in right now where we have this labor shortage and we have this anxiety around how do we improve the industry, it's so easy to just put your head down and try to do things the way that you were taught or the way that you've seen. Having that flexibility and having that creativity to look at things from a different viewpoint, because what is valuable to the workforce now is different from what was valuable to the workforce that was coming in 20 years ago, 30 years ago.
You have to have an affinity for change to want to change all the time. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, most people, because of the way our culture works, not just the industry, but the way our culture works, Western American capitalist culture, aren't really incentivized to want to change and to do something different, lest something is very, very wrong.
And that's one of the nuances, I think, that doesn't often get described when we talk about construction specifically. How open are we as an industry to those perspectives? How much do we value positive conflict? How much do we as an industry think we can improve? Well, I think if you asked almost anyone in our industry today, they would unequivocally say there's a lot of room for improvement.
There's so much out there from a technology standpoint. And, I myself, can I go out and advocate for all paperless job sites? I have a lot of empathy around paper and pen. You don't have to adopt everything. You don't have to know about everything, but it's that natural curiosity that you are looking and you're moving beyond, what your day-to-day is and trying to understand what else is out there that really helps to drive whatever innovation it is, whether it's innovation for your company, for the industry, for the region that you're in. It's all about kind of agitating that growth.
Well, and this productive conflict idea requires a leadership culture that makes it safe to fail and allows for that continuous improvement.
We need to give our employees the time to think, the time to explore, the budget to explore, right? It's okay to throw 50 grand or a few $100,000 at a problem and potentially fail. So there's definitely a need to step back. I think that productivity problem, right, forces everybody to get to the field as quickly as possible to show that you're working. Sometimes if you spent a couple hours thinking before you worked, the rest of the working hours would be much more productive. And we're sort of afraid to do that right now in construction because of the productivity problem. So I think that starts compounding the productivity problem.
And I think that's why pilots are so powerful. You need the space in the room to fail, to potentially test and to ideate. We welcome productive conflict if it's in service to getting us to this better outcome.
As a trade BIM coordinator, it was a tough conversation with my boss and just being like, I value this work and I'm going to do it, but I'm pretty sure my heart is in research and development, is in technology, is in working with people.
A big thing for me is about augmenting the voice of diversity in our industry, right? And so if minorities and women and the younger generation make up a very small percentage of our industry right now, let's make sure that they don't make up a very small percentage of those conversations, right? So we love getting our people up on stage, right? Speaking in front of conferences, leading smart discussions. So I think augmenting the voice of the diverse talent in construction is going to be a big way that we can make a change.
And I just think that these are the things that we want to start being mindful of. And I'd much rather us as an industry have that conversation than making a tick list of how many female do we have on the team, how many male, what ethnicity background are we, what socioeconomic. It's instead of the buckets, it's just how do we get to know each other so we understand, even if we may appear to be one thing, that there's actually diversity there if we empower each other to speak up.
Now, as I sit and finalize the production for this episode, I can't help but to input my 2 cents here. As we talk about diversity in our industry, whether it be gender, age, ethnicity, it's really impactful to bring everyone to the table for these conversations to really drive the industry forward in the changes that we see on the day-to-day basis, to change how we work, how we act, how we communicate as an organization or an industry, to really drive us to that next iteration and the future of an industry as a whole.
CPC wishes to thank Danielle, Tauhira, Uchenna, Frank, and Walker for sharing their stories and strategies with us. Next episode, we'll dive into the brave new world of reality capture tools, from the 360 camera and drones to robotic total stations and laser scanning. Speaking of encouraging diversity, if you've been listening to this podcast and feel like we haven't discussed one of your shared pains, we want to hear from you. Head to constructionprogress.org/podcast and scroll down to submit your share pains for a chance to join us in a future episode. Thank you for listening to the Construction Shared Pains podcast. We look forward to joining you here next time.